They have a brand new race car. It's not quite ready to race. They'll be here next week to test. However, that really opens up the door for two of the other powerhouse factory teams. Peugeot and Aston Martin will go head-to-head here today. Who will come out on top? It'll be a fascinating battle. Neither one has won here at Sebring overall. The win will not come easy. There's a lot of tough competition. The racetrack is even tougher. Sebring will literally shake out any problems you may have. So if you can survive 12 hours here, the teams feel they'll be in great shape for Le Mans in June.
It's not the only thing everyone's talking about here in Sebring. There is a new 5-class structure in the American Le Mans Series this year. Let's walk you through all 5 of the classes.
Well, 3 of those classes are prototype machines. Now, prototype machines are nothing like you'll see out on the street. You'll certainly not have a prototype car roll up against you at the set of traffic lights. The biggest and the fastest is the LMP1 machines. They're about 900 kilos for the petrol-powered cars, 930 for diesels, top speed approaching 200 miles an hour, and their little brother is called the P2 machine. Now, what this is a little bit lighter, less horsepower, but phenomenal cornering ability. Lots of downforce. These cars really grab the grip through the corners and will be as fast as those P1 machines in certain sections of this racetrack. And a third and really exciting new category is LMPC, standing for Challenge. 430 horsepower comes from those Chevrolet engines, 925 kilos, top speed about 160. But if qualifying is anything to go by here yesterday, it was a fascinating battle. We hope to see more of that here today.
That's the prototype classes out of the way. Now let's go to the production-based classes. There are 2 of them, and we start with our GT, or under ACO regulations, GT2 class. And these are the exotic machines, the Ferraris, the BMWs, the Porsches. Let's not forget the American muscle in Corvette. 450 to 500 horsepower. This class is the class that everybody is talking about right here this weekend. And our final class is the new GTC class. As Calvin mentioned with the Le Mans prototype, C stands for Challenge. It also stands for Control, I guess you could say. And across this class, there are 3 different types of Porsches that are eligible, and the boys will explain that a little further in the show. So there you have it, the new 5-class structure. Look at the crowd here today. Amazing scenes. And I have to tell you, too, that it is absolutely beautiful weather. One man who knows all about Florida weather is also another winner here at Sebring, our Dorsey Schrader. Dorse, you know this circuit so well back in your Skippy days before you went professional racing. You have to treat this place with a lot of respect, don't you?
Yeah, you do. I mean, Sebring's racetrack is the roughest, bumpiest racetrack that these cars and drivers run it. It's tough on suspension. It's really, really hard on driveline. And this week, during practice and qualifying, well, it's just been really hard to get a grip on it. Time after time, as the week went on, we saw cars just inexplainably spinning and having big crashes. Now, it's happened throughout every single day of practice, every day of qualifying. And the good news, really, about this whole situation is, even after crashes like this, Paul Drayson, all these cars have miraculously been repaired. All the drivers are fine. But I got to tell you, it didn't just stop at the end of these practices and qualifyings either, because this morning it shocked everyone. In practice this morning, at the beginning of the warm-up for this 12-hour race, once again the track bit. Here Joey Hand finds firsthand just how quick things can go wrong.
It has been a double blow to that BMW Ray Hall Letterman team. We'll explain more, but they're scrambling to get that car up and ready for this Mobil 1 12 hours of Sebring. So it's not exactly the ideal start to a massive day ahead. Thanks, Dorsey, for that. Thank you to Calvin as well. We'll meet some of the stars, the cast of characters, when we come back. We'll hear from the people who have done well and who have victory in their sights. American Le Mans Series racing is intense, and we're going to see plenty of that in 2010, just like we did in 2009.
We talked about the battle for the lead in GT2. That is the 45 and the 3, and it doesn't get much closer than that. The battle in GT2 rages on.
And here comes Magnussen with a Corvette running around the outside. Will he stick there? They're going to hit.
Oh, they bump. And now the 3, Magnussen loses that battle. Magnussen is going to get the job done. Now he bumps him, hits him at the exit, loosens him up. Bergmeister drives him to the wall, down the front straightaway, rubbing into the wall, and he crashes him big. Speed's coverage of the American Le Mans Series Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring is brought to you by Hamburger Helper. 1 pound, 1 pan, 1 tasty meal. By Mobil 1, the world's leading synthetic motor oil brand. Step up to Mobil 1 at your next oil change. And by Michelin, a better way forward.
gorgeous Florida day greets us for the 58th running of the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. It also doubles as round one of the 2010 American Le Mans Series presented by Patron, and again a very healthy crowd on hand to watch what will unfold today. For those visiting, for those full-time competitors in the American Le Mans Series. As you've already heard in our show today, the Peugeot Audi fight will not occur here. That has been transformed into a Peugeot Aston Martin fight. And for Peugeot, those French giants, today is an integral part in their defense of Le Mans, as Chris Neville tells us more.
That's right, Lee. Peugeot will defend that victory later in June this year, but they have still yet to win Sebring. And Nick, this is the last year for the 908. Would a win at Sebring cement its place in history?
Definitely would be. You know, that car has pretty much won everything now. Very quick car, very beautiful car, you know, and it's such a big event in here, you know. 12 Hours of Sebring, to win that race, you really are in the story, and hopefully we can do that, and everything else will follow after that.
Well, they've got two cars on the front row. Can they get this last piece of the puzzle?
Yes, Nick Manassian, the most experienced of the Peugeot drivers in those beautiful 908s. We'll hear more and see more from those guys a little later. Now, this isn't a bad joke down at your local pub. What do you get when you combine a veteran Aussie and an exciting young Frenchman? Well, you get an incredible, a dynamic duo. And I'm talking about David Brabham and Simon Pagenaud, or as he likes to be called, Simon Pagenaud. Last year, they were rivals. It was a very different story in the Patron Highcroft Acura then against the XM Satellite de Ferran Acura. Lots of laughing there. That laughing continues because now they combine in the one team. And Justin Bell has more on this.
David, Simon, obviously last year you were superstars in your own right. Kind of between you, you cleared up in the ALMS series. Now you're in the same car, which probably means you're a superstar team. Is that a foregone conclusion that Sebring is an easy victory for you?
I don't think so. Any race is always difficult. Sebring is the most prestigious race out there, one of the most difficult for the cars. It's very rough on the track. So we'll see. I mean, I'm very happy to be with David. We've done a...
And when you look at having Simon as a teammate now, you're finding what the strengths are from last year? You know a little bit more about his driving?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, it was tough last year trying to beat Simon. So I'm glad he's on our side, not against us. And you know, straight away you can see he's a complete professional. And we're both working very well together, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of the season.
The addition of Marino here, I think, makes you a very formidable force. Good luck, gentlemen.
And lots of people looking forward to seeing that Patron Highcroft HPD car in the P2 class. It has been very, very fast, and they are one of the 9 teams here today making their way to Le Mans. Team principal Duncan Dayton is very excited about that. Let's switch gears from P2 to GT, or GT2 as the ACO refers to it as, and this is going to be a massive fight. You've got the American muscle in Corvette racing transferring from GT1 into the GT2 class here at Sebring. Lots of excitement surrounding the local favourites, but how about the international marques, the Ferraris, the Porsches, the BMWs? And let's talk more about BMW, because they were at the centre of some controversy in GT2 qualifying yesterday, and particularly the number 90 machine of Dirk Muller, a celebrated driver internationally, a celebrated driver here in the American Le Mans Series and at Sebring. This car and Dirk set a blistering pace yesterday, only to have the pole position removed from it with a post-qualifying technical infraction. We'll go deeper into that during the race commentary to tell you exactly what happened. That handed the pole to the GT2 rival in Porsche and Flying Lizard and Jörg Bergmeister. Now, it's appropriate we bring up Jörg's name and congratulate him for the pole, incidentally, because he was at the centre of controversy at the end of the 2009 racing year in the American Le Mans Series. Let's take you back to Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca, and it was Jörg Bergmeister against Corvette Racing's Jan Magnussen. This was right at the end of a multi-hour race, and it was the fight for the class when coming down to the final corner there was contact, and folks, this ended badly. People have been talking about this during the off-season. Are they still talking about it, Jamie Howe?
Jörg Bergmeister comes into the 2010 season following that incident in York. After Laguna, is that incident now behind you?
Yeah, that incident is definitely behind me. Jan and I talked, and there's no bad feelings, so we both agreed on what happened, and really everything is okay.
As you start the season, you also start on pole for the first time. How is that going to help you over the course of the 12-hour race?
I mean, the pole came a little unexpected as a BMW failed tech, so we were actually second, but it's nice to be on pole, especially in Sebring. For a 12-hour race, it doesn't really mean a whole lot because it's such a long race and a lot of things can happen, so it's nice, but it doesn't really help.
With the nature of the event and being on probation, will that change the way you race today?
Oh, not really. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy who, it's the first time I'm on probation. I never had an incident before since 2002 that I'm in the series, so I'm not really worrying about it.
We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, and York says he's put the Laguna incident behind him, but it was your car that was wrecked. It was you that were injured. Do you or anyone else on this team have any ill will against the 45 Lizard Porsche?
No, absolutely not. Last year, this is a new season, and we're just gonna go into this new season, race as hard as we can. I've spoken with York, and we both agree that stuff like that just cannot happen. But it shouldn't ruin the good racing either, because up until those last 100 yards, that was a fantastic race, one of the best races I've ever had. So we'll just push hard and have fun and make sure everybody's safe.
Good luck today.
Thanks.
And the American Le Mans Series, of course, gets its name from the fabulous 24 Hours of Le Mans, the ACO, the Automobile Club de l'Ouest, who run the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And this event and Petit Le Mans at the end of the year, Dorsey, run under what we call ACO rules. That's why we refer to that class as GT2. When you'll be calling the American Le Mans Series throughout the year, running under American rules, it will be referred to as GT. But very quickly, what are your thoughts on that GT2 class here? There's so much excitement around it.
This is going to be a war. I mean, throughout the entire year, not just here. But, I mean, GT2 is going to carry this show for ALMS, I think. It's all the factory guys, and they're playing for keeps.
Once again, in the paddock yesterday at the noon autograph session, one of the longest, if not the longest line was again for the American team Corvette Racing. They spent multiple years literally racing themselves in the GT1, the now defunct GT1 class here in the United States anyway. Now they go to GT2. They had a couple of races in GT2 last year. This is what program leader Doug Feehan and the whole Corvette organization have been waiting for, isn't it?
It is, and you don't have to look very far to see all of the Corvette owners here. The Corvette Corral over there, packed. I mean, all of the Corvette owners in the United States are pulling for these boys.
Well, the great thing about the GT2 class is there are so many marques represented. There are 13 cars in that class, incidentally, and there's some 8 or 9 manufacturers. So whether you're a Ferrari fan, a Porsche fan, whatever your flavor is, it will be accommodated in that GT2 class. So the countdown to green continues. We are getting very close to the start of the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. Back at Sebring, the countdown continues. We're getting ever so close to the start of the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. So much to talk about, so much to see, so much change, and so much excitement. The Hall of Fame, the Sebring Hall of Fame list continues to grow with some new inductees this year, headed by the late Phil Walters and the late Reginald Smith, Hurley Haywood, Derek Daly, and Michelin becomes only the 4th manufacturer to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, and we can't forget John Morton either. And during that ceremony, Derek Daly was a little taken off task and taken off focus because his teenage son Connor was racing in the Star Mazda race at that time. But we congratulate all of the Sebring Hall of Fame inductees. 5-time Le Mans winner and a Hall of Fame member Derek Bell is here at Sebring, as well as a whole host of stars. So we once again congratulate those people, and that was a fine ceremony yesterday. You can see the drivers strapping into their cars, last minute photos being taken. All of the pre-race ceremony is almost complete as the anticipation is just about over. And the fans, the front straight has been cleared. Now the teams have been asked to clear the grid as well. It is time for the important words in motorsport. Let's hear from Martin May.
Drivers, start your engines.
All right.
And that is exactly the sound that we wish to hear. We also wish to hear this sound. It belongs to Brian Till, the man who will call the entire American Le Mans Series season for speed. Hi, Brian.
Great season in the 2010 American Le Mans Series, and I think a lot of the competition is going to come not only here at Sebring, but throughout the year, and it's going to come in the two newest classes, GT Challenge and LMP Challenge. You guys have already talked about it a little bit, but the GTC cars ran 5 times in 2009. Both challenge classes will run throughout the 2010 American Le Mans Series season. GTC cars 5 times last year. You said, Lee, Porsche 911 GT3 Cup cars, 2008, 2009, or 2010. But the newest class, the LMP Challenge, an open cockpit, carbon-topped prototype, very similar to an LMP1 or an LMP2 car, but with sealed power plants and spec Michelin tires. The competition was already intense in qualifying, and for more on the challenge class qualifying, we'll head back downstairs. We'll go ladies first with Jamie.
Thanks, Brian. And Elton Julian making his return to the American Le Mans Series, this time in the LMPC class. Elton, you raced here in 2006 and finished 4th, so you know what it takes to do well and survive. Can this car do that?
In the right hands with the right team, I believe it can, and we think we're that team, and hopefully we're the drivers with the right hands. But, you know, it's a new class, it's a new car. Some parts of the car have been around for quite a while, some parts are relatively new. So making those two things work together is key. And I think driving a smart race will be there at the end.
And with as close as qualifying was in the LMPC yesterday, it should be an exciting race today. Chris with GTC.
Well, typically we see Butch Leitzinger in the prototype class, but this year Butch is going to be doing some GT racing, and his GTC car is on pole. Butch, you've had an incredible career, but it's been 20 years since you won Sebring. What have you been doing at this race the past 20 years?
I've been coming in second a lot. We're just reviewing that, and I've come in second 3 times by less than a lap. So I think it's about time we turn that around.
You've had so much time in the prototype cars over the years. What is it like to get back into a GT car?
Pardon my French, but I've had to kind of recalibrate my backside because in a prototype, if you move about that much, you've already lost it. Where with this, if you move about 3 feet, that's kind of normal. So it's a lot more movement in the car. So it's taken a little bit for me to get used to that and not panic too much. But these guys have been schooling me.
Well, just like in the LMPC class, a very tight group up at the front of GTC.
Cars underway on the reconnaissance laps, or the pace laps, I should say. Dorsey and Calvin, you've both talked about how challenging this racetrack is. There are going to be some keys to finding victory here at Sebring. Both of you guys have done it. Tell us about it.
Well, the challenge of traffic, and no pun intended here, but we've got the 2 challenge classes. There's a lot of guys running in the ALMS for the very first time, so that is going to be the key for these fast prototypes to swerve around those guys, Dorsey.
That's a fact. And to get points in this class, you have to compete 70% of the race distance. So it would be very well advised not to drive at 100%, maybe knock it back to 98%, so you can achieve the 70% and then go for it.
And we talk about how rough this racetrack is. You have to survive the rough times, and that means on the racetrack, the cars to survive. And when you get into the pits, if you do have a problem, you have to be prepared, Brian. You have to be ready to execute and get those problems taken care of quickly.
And you know there are going to be rough times here at Sebring. The racetrack here has changed over the years, but the one thing that has not changed, the configuration may have, but it is an old World War II bomber base. It is very rough, and for the drivers, it creates a tremendous challenge. Let's take a look at the track map.
The Great Sebring International Raceway is 3.7 miles in length with 17 corners. It is probably the roughest racing circuit that any of these cars and drivers will run on. Great wide open expanses and good braking zones, particularly in turn 1, turn 7, and turn 17.
Now, courtesy of iRacing.com, we're on board the Chevy Corvette GT2 car, about 150 miles an hour approaching turn 1. It's down a gear. Look at the blind nature of this racetrack. You can't see through that corner. And look at the bumps here on the exit. You have to be careful.
The run down to turn 7, which is also called the hairpin, is a great straightaway. Second fastest, you reach top speed here, and in the brake zone, you're going from top gear all the way to first. Getting the power down off this corner is very hard. It's wide open up through this series of S's onto the straightaway.
Down that long back straightaway between 16 and 17 as the guys enter this corner. Look at this. It is a very long corner. Many different lines to be taken through here. Again, very bumpy. Trying to get on that power early, working the steering wheel, working the throttle, trying to get good exit speed on the front straightaway here at Sebring.
Very fitting that it is our hamburger helper track map, because these guys are going to get mixed up like a bunch of hamburger helper in a pan out there, as rough as this racing surface is. Now we'll have a chance to look at the starting grid as it rolls across the top of your screen, but we also want to take a moment to introduce you to the drivers in our 5-class pole-sitting cars.
I'm Anthony Davidson from the United Kingdom.
My name is Marc Genet and I come from Spain.
Alex Woods, coming from Austria.
Marino Franchitti, Edinburgh, Scotland.
Simon Pagenaud from Montmorillon, France.
Hi, I'm David Brabham. You know where I'm from. Earth.
Gunnar Jeanette from West Palm Beach, Florida, currently living in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Elton Julian, Quito, Ecuador.
My name is Christian Zugel. I come from Stuttgart, Germany.
Hi, I'm Jörg Bergmeister from Langenfeld, Germany.
Hi, I'm Patrick Long from Oak Park, California, currently living in Clearwater, Florida.
Hi, I'm Mark Lieb from Ludwigsburg, Germany.
Lehman Keane, Charleston, South Carolina.
Hi, my name is Juan Gonzalez and I'm from Monterrey, Mexico.
I'm Butch Leitzinger from State College, Pennsylvania.
Cars on the final pace lap. We're going to see a green flag very soon, but we still have stories developing down in the pits. Chris, what have you got?
Well, Dorsey, you talked about all those wrecks we saw in practice, and what did those wrecks do? They caused red flags. So a lot of these teams, these drivers, these engineers haven't had a chance to see what these cars are going to do over a long run. Low on fuel and worn out tires. So what the teams are doing is they're coming up with setups that have the ability to adjust. They have to have adjustability in the tires and possibly aerodynamics, because this race, the track is always changing, the weather's going to be changing. They have to have adjustability. Jamie, what do you have?
Well, Chris, we talked about the number 90 BMW having trouble this morning in warm-up. That car is in pit lane. It is ready to take the green flag. It's going to have to start from pit lane, though, after being excluded. I spoke with Dirk Mueller, who's starting the car today, and he said he's a little bit nervous about having to come up through the pack of those GT Challenge cars, merely because he's not familiar with the drivers and their driving styles. So that's something we can keep an eye on. He said it is going to take him a couple laps. Justin, what's at your end?
Well, Chris mentioned unpredictability and unknown, and certainly two new formats here, two new categories in this race, LMPC and GTC. The teams running these cars have an awful lot of unknowns facing them. So while they're in a race of their own, and they're certainly significantly slower in cases than the Peugeots, for example, they will be a contributing and deciding factor in the outcome of this race. Mark my words, guys in the booth, we're going to see them play into this scenario a lot.
One of the things we're already seeing play in the scenario is cold tires. We've had crashes throughout the weekend because of the cool weather. We've already had a spin during the pace laps here. The problem for the number 11, one of the LMPC cars.
Bill Feinberg behind the wheels, who's just trying to generate tire temperature, and he spun it around there. Didn't look like he may have flat spotted the tires, Dorsey. Maybe he swerved a bullet there.
We're going to see this every time you see pit stops for new tires. Those first couple laps on sticker tires are just like on ice.
And one of the things they're saying about the tires on that LMP Challenge car is that it takes 4 or 5 laps of hard running to get them up to temperature. Hard running we're about to have, as you saw the beautiful Jaguar pace car about to come to pit road, leading the field down that long back straightaway, all Peugeot front row, and expect to see the torque of those diesel engines launch these beautiful prototypes down to turn 1, but the Aston Martin right behind the Lola as well. The green flag waves for the 58th time at Sebring. We're racing.
And look at Fernandez there trying to get a jump on the Aston Martin. Can he take second position away as the Peugeots flash through turn 1? No.
Had a good run at it, but not enough to get by. That torque on those diesels will pull them clear of this field pretty quickly.
Pirro settles into the 4th position in that race in the green machine right there. The number 8.
Field settling down. You hear some fireworks going off in the background and the celebration of the green flag. And right now, as a driver, guys, what's going through your mind? You know the tires are cold and you know you got 12 hours ahead.
Well, you can't get too racy too early. Here we see the number 90, Dirk Mueller. He's qualified on the pole position, had that taken away, and then he had the start taken away with the accident with Joey Hans, so he's going again. But you just got to be calm. This is a really long race here. You can certainly lose it in the first lap, Dorsey, but you certainly cannot win it.
No, 12 hours around this thing is harder than 24 hours of Daytona, 24 hours of Le Mans, either one. It's so rough around this racetrack, you just can't say it enough times. that you have to take care, and you really got to drive with your head here.
Alexander Wurz in one of the Peugeots running first, and then his teammate Sebastian Bourdais and that other beautiful Peugeot, the 08, running second. Now, while the first 4 cars may look very similar, guys, should tell the people at home and reiterate 2 very different types of power plants in those 4 cars up front. Diesels in the Peugeots, petrol-powered power plants in the 2 cars right behind.
The third place car right there, the Aston Martin, with that beautiful V12, has got good top-end speed. It might be able to get in front of one of these Peugeots here. We'll see. It's got more top-end than the diesel does.
Down that long back straightaway, speeds about 190 miles an hour. And then hard on the brakes, and this is really a very difficult corner there. It's blind, you can't see through the middle of the corner, and then the bumps are really the kicker there. As you come off there, that's where Joey Hand lost it this morning. Pirro putting the pressure on Fernandez for third.
And Emanuele Pirro, great to see him back in American Le Mans Series competition, an Audi driver for so many years, tasting success everywhere they ran, whether it was Le Mans, Petit Le Mans, or here at Sebring, out of that Audi seat for the last couple of years, and now he's found his way back into a prototype here with Drayson.
Well, he's such a character. He just has such a passion for racing. He said in 2008, I said it would be my last prototype race in an Audi. He said I didn't say I'd retired. He got the call from Drayson and just jumped on it, and he's very excited to be here.
And now he's learning what works about again. Out of the Audi into something less than that. The Audi was just so good to drive. Such an, I'm not going to say easy, but you know, it's just such a great car. Not to say that this isn't, but
you watch the cars streaming through some rules changes in the off seasons to help bring the power of that diesel under control a little bit and help equate the prototypes with the petrol cars and the diesel cars. Calvin, they got a smaller air restrictor on the diesel engine and less turbocharged boost. Where's that going to have more of an effect, off the corner or on the long straightaways?
Well, I think the key is, what did they gain back? I mean, these engineers don't sit still. They claim it cost them about 40 horsepower, Dorsey, but they keep massaging. It's like when they take air away, suddenly they find they got the same downforce the next year. So I think ultimately when we get to Le Mans, this car, the Peugeot, and the Audi, even with these restrictions, will have similar power to what we've seen in the past.
Here we see Joel Feinberg in the pits. I'm sure that's for flat spotted tires. That's the car that spun earlier. I'm sure that he didn't get away unscathed.
Well, if you have any sort of vibration emanating from a flat spot tire, you really want to bring it in. You can't afford to run for a full hour, which is the stint for fuel here, without bringing the car into pit lane, because if that blows, it's going to just wreck the bodywork, potentially take you off the racetrack.
And this racetrack is harsh enough, but that square spot on that tire just creates even more vibration. Let's go back to the battle in GT2. Right now, up front, Wolf Hensler in that beautiful green and blue number 17 Porsche out in front. You see him right there behind the black and white prototype that flashes by. And what a great story there. Falken, the tire manufacturer, they're using racing to develop their tires. It's not a team that's running them. It is the company, it is the tire company fielding a car in the American Le Mans Series to generate information and build a better tire.
And they've certainly done a great job in this offseason. They ran 4 races last year. They brought a couple of factory Porsche drivers on board for this 12-hour to join Brian Sellers, who'll be driving for the team full-time this year. But right now they're out front. The key is, how long will these tires keep to this level of performance? There's one thing to build a tire, Dorsey. You'll do a qualifying lap, maybe run 6-8 laps, but you're going to be needing to run 30 laps at least in a stint for these GT2 cars. Can he hang in there and stay with the lead?
And for Falken Tire, what better way to get the information? They're up against the best tires manufactured in the world in this race, so they'll know right away where they stack up and where the weaknesses might be.
Now remember, Hensler started second, so he has gotten past Jörg Bergmeister, a driver that he knows well. Let's take a look at the pass.
This is down the long back straight going in the hairpin, turn 7 we talked about on the track map. Just everybody being very kind to one another right now.
And it looked like he motored around the outside, which is difficult to do down there, but perhaps Jörg Bergmeister saying, you know what, right now I may not have the ideal car. It's not time to fight, not yet. Just behind Bergmeister in the silver and red 45. You see the red 62 Ferrari, Jamie Mello behind the wheel. Risi Competizione Ferrari, 5 endurance races in a row, including Le Mans and Sebring and Petit Le Mans. These guys know how to get it done. We talked about the battle in GT2. You're going to see it for 12 hours here, and you're going to see it for the entire 2010 season. Remember, 5 classes here at Sebring running for the honors overall and for their class. They'll look at the leaders. We'll be back to plenty more action from Sebring. You couldn't ask for better weather here at Sebring. The 58th running of the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. And right now, up front, it's Peugeot, the 07 of Alexander Wirtz. You see him flash by in that beautiful V12 diesel-powered Peugeot. Holding down the point right now, his teammate Sebastian Bourdais right behind. And then the black and green livery of Emanuele Pirro in the Lola from Drayson Racing. That is your top three as they're already beginning to work through slower traffic.
What's going to be interesting to watch with that lead car is when they do their driver change. You got Wirtz in there right now, he's about 6'4", and you got the Anthony Davidson, who's like 5'6". So, but curiously enough, because Wirtz doesn't use a seat insert, Anthony was telling us that they really have a quicker driver change when it's either Wirtz getting in or out, as opposed to the other two drivers on that squad.
And you see right there from the speed differentials on that graphic. Oh, there you go. You talked about the challenge of traffic. Look what it's done for Pirro.
Nearly nailed the Peugeot coming into that corner. Wow, he's got around. Fernandez is now really on the charge here. Pirro showing that his days of running one of these cars at the top level are not over indeed.
He has not lost the fire, that is for certain. Calvin, you said it earlier, the C stands for challenge. It's going to be a challenge on the racetrack for these drivers. See right there, the prototypes coming up on the challenge driver. I'm not sure he knows they're there.
Well, the challenge driver did exactly the worst thing you can do, which is stay right in the middle of the road. He didn't go to the left, didn't go to the right, then those two guys had no choice but split him.
The problem is when you're in one of those GT cars, it's really hard to see out of the rear view mirror and the side view mirrors. I mean, you really get blind, particularly when you're transitioning backwards and forwards. You can see a the rear wing on the car that's in camera shot right there. So it's hard for those guys. So yes, they should be out of the way, but sometimes you're so, focused on what you're doing, Dorsey. You don't see them come. They come up on you so fast. You think you're clear and there's no one behind you. Then suddenly these prototypes are on you in an instant.
And even if you saw one, he surely wouldn't have seen the one tucked underneath it.
Right.
As that battle continues, Pirro beginning to lose a little ground. The traffic brought the Peugeot to him, but now beginning to lose a little bit of ground as that diesel V12 can stretch his legs a little bit down to the hairpin. Traffic yet again is going to come into play.
And this is going to be there all day long for the course of 12 hours. Now, Emanuele Pirro, when he brought the car to the grid today, he was welcomed by the Audi chief of motorsport, Dr. Wolfgang Ulrich. He was there to give Emanuele a pat on the back, say a good race today, but I'm sure that after this race, he would like to know how are those Peugeots doing out there. And right now, Pirro has really a grandstand seat to see exactly what those pugs are doing, how they're going to be, what they're going to be like at Le Mans potentially.
Here we go with more GT Challenge traffic. Look at the leader working through, and look how first through third has closed up the proverbial blanket. You said, Calvin, all day long, this is what the drivers will have to deal with. And later in the day, as the sun begins to set and the vision becomes difficult, it may be even more of a challenge. Wirtz beginning to work through that traffic, through the final corners, onto the back straightaway.
Oh, Pirro looking really racy there. He is taking some chances here, Dorsey. He is really forcing the issue right now.
See what kind of run he gets on this back straightaway. I think he had a pretty good run out of that last corner. I don't know if he'll have enough to dive to the inside of 17 or not this time.
Now, you would have to think that these Peugeot drivers, they have a long and steady run of testing and some more races before Le Mans over in Europe they want to compete in. They damaged a monocoque here earlier in the weekend. I'm sure they are under strict orders. Do not damage any of these race cars here today. They have to be careful.
And we're not the only ones who thinks this battle is pretty impressive. Remember, this is the first time that there's been a prototype for Drayson Racing at Sebring. Chris, what are they doing down in the pits?
Well, this is a great opportunity for Emanuele Pirro to get back behind the wheel, but also a great opportunity for a young driver like Johnny Cocker to work with a guy who's won Le Mans and Sebring so many times. Johnny, what has it been like to work with Emanuele this weekend?
No, he's a fantastic guy. Really enjoyed, obviously in the team, and also we can learn an awful lot. He's doing a fantastic job now, and really, showing the Peugeots that we've got good pace from the start. So it's going to be an exciting race if it continues like this.
Did you anticipate that the battle would be this tight up front in the beginning hour of this race?
No, not really, but we know from our experience already, even though we have, only small experience, that the car's really strong at the start of the race. We're great on the tyres, and maybe Peugeot are just, playing a bit of a game, but we'll see.
Well, they might be playing a little bit of a game, but Pirro is all over them.
Pirro hanging tough, and remember, we talked about the rules changes in the offseason designed to take some of the performance away from the diesel and give some performance back to the petrol-powered cars. Pirro now caught in traffic, and it looks like those rule changes have helped a little bit. The petrol-powered cars got a larger restrictor. It gets more air, so it produces more horsepower. and that performance gap seems to have been closed a bit. Pirro working his way through traffic, but the car that was missing, or that still is missing, is the 007, the beautiful blue and orange Aston Martin. There he is. He has gotten lost. I don't know if he's just biding his time running a pace, or has the traffic moved him back?
Well, I think probably a combination of both. I mean, George Howard Chapel, who leads this team, will certainly have given Adrian and the rest of the driving squad strict orders on how to really approach this race. They know they need to be there at the finish, but certainly right now he's getting the worst case of the traffic and dropping about 2 seconds a lap.
We said in the qualifying show yesterday, if there was a car out here who could be awarded the victory because of sound, it would be the V12 Aston Martin prototype, because it is a beautiful sounding machine. But right now, he's got a long way to go to catch the 3 in front.
Brian had just checked in with George Howard Chapel, who's in charge of that car, and he said, you know what, nothing is wrong with the Aston Martin. They're just running their pace. They came up with a plan for this race, and they're not going to go out and try and sprint after these Peugeots in this opening hour. So they're telling Adrian, just run your laps. Don't worry about what those guys are doing.
I think that's the right thing to do, too, because I think that the Peugeots are just running at a pace to stay in the lead. I don't think they're running it.
Well, one thing we have to talk about here, we look at a replay once again, and this is Pirro getting around Adrian Fernandez, setting him up, I believe.
Works him through several corners, but then it looks like just under brakes.
Oh, he is in really deep there, Dorsey. Forced the issue.
He didn't leave him a lot of room. He left him enough for it to be not dirty driving, but he was making it tight. No doubt about that.
I see Fernandez working through some of the LMP challenge cars. That was Joel Feinberg, who had his problems early on. But Fernandez running a pace, and so difficult to do. You want to go, you want to race, but you got to say, hey, we've got a plan and we're sticking to it. That's exactly what Aston Martin is doing right now, sticking to their plan. We will as well. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back to Sebring, we'll bring you plenty more action from 5 American Le Mans Series classes. But if you think the drivers in the American Le Mans Series are daring, join us Wednesdays on Speed and buckle in as these rugged four-wheelers take you to the most isolated and hostile territory in the country. Extreme off-roaders, all new dangerous drives, Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern, only on Speed. We've had a little off-roading here throughout the week as well, guys, but right now everything's smooth sailing for Alexander Wurz up front in his Peugeot, but for Paul Gentilosi's group in the 75, the Jaguar in the GT category, problems.
There are problems, Brian. The car's in pit lane, as you can see. You know, this crew is still learning the car. They're on the radio saying, I don't see what the problem is. And when it came into pit lane, there was a substantial amount of steam coming out from under the hood. They drained all of the excess water. They also put fuel into the car and overfilled that. So there's fuel leaking in pit lane as well. They're going back and forth on the radio trying to figure out if they should take it back to the paddock or if they should keep it here. They're talking about the head gaskets right now. This crew's still learning the car. As I said, this is the first full season with it, and it is the second generation of the car. It's not the same car that we saw them run at the end of last season. So they're doing all of their testing on the racetrack today, and I'll keep an eye on it.
Well, this car yesterday we saw in the shots earlier had a small collision down there in turn 17, but it was due to a blown engine. It actually blew the bottom end of the engine out, spun in his own oil, and then in qualifying yesterday came back in, and it was spewing a lot of steam, a lot of overflow.
Yeah, it looked like on the telemetry it was trying to find the temperature. It was kind of going up and down, up and down, up and down, but then all of a sudden, that last lap, it just skyrocketed.
Yeah, it may have had a air pocket in it, and it was moving the air around in the system. And that's not good at all. We may have heard a head gasket.
That's Paul Gentilosi talking back to his crew chief about the theory of a blown head gasket.
And a problem for the Dyson entry. The 16 car is now slow. Remember, this car had run so well, the new biobutanol fuel that they had tested last year, and I saw some telltale smoke out the back there, Dorsey. Was that out of one of the exhaust pipes or just from underneath the rear deck lid?
I think actually it was a blow-by tube that was puffing back there. I don't think it was from the tailpipe for sure, but we'll see when Chris brings it in here. Do you see it right there? You can see it at the back of the car.
Just 20 minutes in, and this would be a disaster for this team if there's any kind of big engine problem here, because they went out early last year. They've done a lot of work on the AER engine, and he takes it back to the paddock. So it's either day over or there's a lot of work to be done on that car to get it back out there.
Calvin was just listening to Chris Dyson on the radio, and he said the engine is misfiring. The team says they think it's possibly just a spark plug issue, not a major electrical issue. So they're going to take them back to the paddock, try and get into that engine, see if they can find something quickly, and get them back out on the racetrack. I'll keep checking in with the team and see if I can find out anything more.
Now, this Mazda engine last year brought them wins. It brought them pole positions. You see that little telltale smoke there. And like you said, Dorsey, perhaps an overflow tube or just a vent tube. But this year, they have beefed up that motor. The engine block, the head, the valve train, all of it new, a little bit beefier, and the Jag still sits on pit road. But they have high hopes for that Mazda MZR power plant. And if it's electrical, that's one thing. But if it were something internal, I know that would be very disappointing. You see the fuel there at the back, and that's certainly not, you don't want to see that underneath a hot car.
That's just overflow, though. That's no big deal at all. But this is what happened yesterday after the crash. Look underneath the car. You can see right down here at the bottom, oil out of there, and, of course, the fire going. And then in qualifying, like I say, he had an overheating problem there, too, so he might have hurt the head gasket yesterday.
Pretty massive explosion to have parts out the bottom of the car like that, and that's the oil. You see Mark Goossens climbing out of the car, and this, you see,
this
moments
is today.
ago.
Yeah. And that is definitely, look at the water running down the door, just pouring down the side of the door. And that is the overflow, and it's being rude.
And don't forget, this Rocket Sports team and Paul Gentilozzi know how to produce cars that win. They've done plenty of it. They've done it here as well at Sebring. So just some teething problems right now for that team, but I know it is certainly frustrating. I'm sure it's frustrating down in the Dyson camp as well, Chris.
Yeah, and Rob Dyson is in charge of that camp. Rob, I listened to Chris on the radio. He said the car is misfiring. Now it's back underneath the tent. What is going on with the 16?
Well, like I said, he had a little misfire. We're going back. It's easier to do it back at the truck. It takes us 3 minutes to get to the truck. You got everything there. We can diagnose everything there better than we can doing it here, and it's a little less risky. Plus, if we have to do any major stuff, we can dig right in because we got all the tools there. But I don't think it's major. It sounds to me like a little minor deal. He said it was a misfire. Well, we've got to check that out. We've got a lot of new systems on the car and a lot of new things that have never been raced. They've been tested, your dyno and all that, but in the laboratory, things work, but at the racetrack, you got to understand whether it's working or not. We've just got to correct it.
This is round one of the 2010 championship. How important is it going to be to get that car back out on the racetrack today?
Oh, it's real important. That car is going to get out there if I have to drag it out there myself. Oh, it's an important race for us. Yeah, this is a Super Bowl for us. So we got to get out there. Well, the guys are going to work on it. We'll figure it out. I don't think it's that big a deal, but we'll find out. The guys are checking it now.
Well, let's let you get back there.
You bet, thanks.
Well, he said it's like the Super Bowl. Sebring is so huge in itself, the 12-hour event, everyone's victory here. But for the championship, the season-long battle, you've got to get to 70% of the race distance in your class to score points. And we saw last year, DeFerrin Motorsports just come shy of that, and they tried to play catch-up all season long in the P1 championship. Ultimately, Highcroft got points here, and that gave them the buffer and the cushion all season long. The teams realized the importance of getting into that 70% mark here today.
Well, Mazda has 12 class victories at Sebring, but it's been 17 years since they've had one. They're working their way back. Alexander Wirtz, he hopes he's working his way towards a checkered flag. The fans, they're here, so is the weather. Come back, make sure you are too, right after this. Well, if you can't get enough of 12 hours of Sebring, the coverage will continue on speedtv.com at noon with uninterrupted live streaming of the race. From green flag to the checkers, you'll see every moment, whether it's here on the network or on the web. Speedtv.com, you can go there, find out all the schedules, and not miss a lap. And why would you want to? Because the GT battle, it is hot right now, guys. The number 17, Wolf Hensler, still holding down the point from Jörg Bergmeister, but traffic 2 will come into play, and this is going to be interesting because these GT Challenge cars, the speed differential between those and the GT2 cars, really not that great, especially in a straight line.
And this top 6 in GT2 right now are running lap times within 1/10 of a second of one another, but guess who's the fastest man on the racetrack? Dirk Mueller, the car that had to start from pit lane. He's about half a second faster than these boys, just trying to play catch-up. But the question is, Dorsey, 13 laps on the board. How are those Falcon tires going to really hang in there and really try and keep these Michelin-shod cars behind?
That's what we've been watching. I mean, that's been the big question mark. Not the fact that they've got the speed of the tire good enough to contend for a pole position. but can it last the whole way? Look at the two Corvette boys getting racing at the back here.
I've got to rethink. Every time I see that yellow Corvette, I keep thinking GT1 from last year, but it's not. This is the battle for the GT category lead right now, and it is intense. You see the overall leaders, they're going to get involved in it as well. And Emanuele Pirro doing a great job still hanging on. There's one of the LMPCs.
This is going to get ugly. Watch this.
You see the number 11, the green and white LMP Challenge prototype thrown in there in the middle, and he's probably thinking right now, you know what, I'd rather not be here.
And I tell you what, when the leader dug all the way down to the inside wall there, Dorsey, your side view mirror doesn't really catch that part of the racetrack, so those Corvettes were really caught unawares that Wirtz was really down on the inside that far.
And the Corvette, probably amongst all of those cars, is the best equipped for looking out the back or out the sides, but this is a mix-up right here. Look at this.
Wow. Oh, look at that. Pirro down the inside. He takes a position away from Bourdais. That was for second, right there.
From the far left to the far right, and improved the position using GT cars as a pick. And look at Jamie Mello trying to get a run. This is for the lead in GT.
Hensler's going to have the inside of the upcoming corner. Jamie Mello looks to the inside. Think about it, boys. There's a championship on the line here. This is the first hour at Sebring.
Side by side through there is not a real smart thing to do. It's real sandy in that corner.
I tell you what, all the team meetings in the world will not take away. When you get a race car driver, get his blood boiling, he's going to try and get to the front.
And you see the number 6, the white
Porsche Spider coming, plus an LMP.
Crew telling him exactly what I was about to say. The Porsche Spider, you see the white prototype right now in the hands of Greg Pickett. He's working his way through this GT battle as well.
I believe that was Tommy Sadler on the radio for the Flying Lizard Group, giving Jörg Bergmeister the information. Okay, you're in front, but look out, this prototype's coming soon.
Only 30 minutes into this event, and we're already seeing this kind of a battle. And even the P2 prototypes, the top speed differential is not that much greater than the GT cars. Look at the Ferrari.
Well, look at the GT cars try to suck up and draft off of one of the prototype cars. That was a smart move right there by Wolf Hensler. He let the prototype in and then tucked right up underneath him.
What happens there, that prototype, that big rear wing really punches a big hole in the air, and when you're a GT car behind you, you can really get a tremendous drafting effect, slipstream effect from that. That's what Jamie Mello tried to do. He's got the inside line now. I think we may see Hensler fade just a little bit. The lap times look pretty good, but I think those front-running cars just have a little bit more pace here midway through the stint.
And the LMP Challenge car in there as well. Jörg Bergmeister has taken back over the point. Hensler, who had held it for a half an hour, now back to third. The Ferrari, the red 62 there in your shot. Jamie Mello dropping a wheel coming out of turn 4, trying to get that run. And you can really see how the challenge car, the LMP Challenge car right there, really begins to affect the ebb and flow of the battle that's around him. Corvettes ready to pounce as well. Take a look.
The second Peugeot, of course, didn't get clear. Now look, great move right there by Emanuele Pirro. Saw that the Peugeot was held up and ducks to the inside.
Yeah, I think Bourdais was thinking, I'm going to have no part of this. I'm just going to let these guys get through this hairpin turn. Meanwhile, Pirro said, you know what? I'm here to race. Let's go to the front. Wow, what a move. Slices to the inside, gets on the brakes nicely, doesn't lock anything up, and then immediately takes advantage of Hensler off there and clears traffic nicely.
Then the GT cars get stacked up, and that allows Bergmeister to get the run on Hensler. They get side by side, and Jörg Bergmeister takes over the lead in GT.
And these two guys at the front there, the two factory Porsche guys, they know each other well. Jörg Bergmeister, Wolf Hensler, but Jamie Mello is thinking of trying to get that Ferrari right to the front.
The outside of that corner, you can see the sand. Great shot from the chopper there. That gets so sandy out there, you'll almost never want to be exactly where Jörg Bergmeister just drove through.
And 3 different classes of cars represented right there in that battle. Actually 4. We had the prototype 1 categories of the Peugeots, then the GT cars, the LMP Challenge car, and the P2 Porsche of Greg Pickett in there as well. Now the Corvettes beginning to put pressure on number 62, the Ferrari.
Jan Magnussen. Actually, now it's not Jan. Yeah, it is. It's Jan Magnussen that's trying to do the pressure on the Ferrari.
These guys not only racing for the overall win here and for the trophy, they're also racing for the Michelin Green X Challenge, which is a vital manufacturer competition within each of the 2010 American Le Mans Series races, and it rewards the greenest prototype and GT team at each event. The car that goes the farthest, the fastest, and with the smallest environmental impact registers the best score. And you can follow the competition throughout the season on AmericanLeMans.com. Right now, plenty of battles on the racetrack. The Corvettes trying to get the run done. on the GT2 car, there is a look at your leaders in the 5 different American Le Mans Series classes we have here in the 58th running of the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. Speed coverage of the American Le Mans Series Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring is brought to you by Mazda. On any given weekend, there are more Mazdas road raced than any other brand. And by Patron, simply perfect. Competition pretty darn perfect right now. We've got battles in all 5 of the classes that are running here at Sebring, and you can tell with the weather that we've had all week long, a great crowd on hand. I don't think there's any room to park another motorhome. Dorsey probably had to fight to get his in on Monday. Looking at the battle in GT right now, you can see the Ferrari out in front. But let's go back to the challenge class. Right now, the leader, number 81, and one of 3 Alex Job Racing Porsches, Lee Keen. And Lee Keen is a guy who certainly knows how to pedal one of these Porsches.
He really does. He's really come into his own here in the last couple of years. Won the Rolex GT Championship last year alongside Dirk Werner, and just really got a lot of confidence now. He's going over to Europe next week to run at the Nürburgring alongside Dominic Farnbacher in the VLN series, and he just got in this car and he said, you know, I know Sebring, I've never run the 12-hour here, but he said I have the lap record for the Porsche Club of America form of racing, and just intended to come in here as a camper, Dorsey, and just watch. He got the call from Alex Job, jumped on it, and immediately was setting the pace within that team.
I think it's important, you know, Calvin, that we mentioned that these cars, even though, you know, on paper you would say it is the last of the 5 categories in this multi-category race, they're having a very intense battle back here with a load of unknown variables. The Porsche 911 is obviously incredibly well known to these racing teams, and obviously the drivers that are behind the wheel. And with a few minor regulation, you know, specification differences, these cars are, for all intents and purposes, a known quantity. But, you know, these tires are very hard, and they're actually, which means that they can go a long way on the tires. They are hard to get up to temperature when they're cold, just because of the, you know, because of the traction. But it's, they're really settling into a good pace, and everyone at the team is very impressed with Lee at the moment.
He's doing a great job holding down the point, sharing that car with Juan Gonzalez and Butch Leitzinger. Leitzinger, another very talented driver. We talked about that as well. Good battles in GTC, but Lee Keen having it all his way right now. Remember, the other challenge category is the Le Mans Prototype Challenge class. And that, too, the battle in qualifying was absolutely spectacular. As you watch one of the 89 go by, and then the 95 of Ryan Hunter-Reay. He is your leader, and Ryan Hunter-Reay, another one of those drivers, immensely talented.
Oh, there's some real talent in these challenge classes. We talk about Butch Leitzinger and Lee Keen in the car that's leading right now, but when you look at the front of the pack here in the LMPC Championship, you got Ryan Hunter-Reay. He's fresh off a second-place finish in the IndyCar Championship season opener down in Brazil last week. You've got Christophe Bouchou. He's won Daytona. He's won Le Mans. You've got Andy Wallace, an endurance master. They're 1, 2, 3 right now in this class.
Yeah, Calvin, it's quite interesting down here with the team. They are, you know, having a driver of the current high profile of Ryan Hunter-Reay really lifts everybody. And you can certainly see for Scott Tucker, what a dream come true. But I was talking with James Gué, who was saying that obviously in practice, these cars, remember, have not gone that far as a race distance. We talk about Peugeot and Patron cars doing full race distance simulations. These cars coming over from Europe have not done that. So it's a known quantity up to the hour mark, and after that it's pretty much a free-for-all as to what's going to happen. Remember that these LMPC cars are sort of a one-spec series. There's a lot of, which means the engines are sealed, the transmission gearboxes are sealed, so that it's really up to the teams to make the most within the framework of the regulations. So I think this is a very exciting battle to see unfold, as is the GT, I understand.
Well, you know, the LMPC car is definitely sophisticated, but the GT cars are as well. Take a look at this battle. Jamie Mello in the red Ferrari out in front of the 2 Corvettes.
Not for long, though.
Yeah, look at this.
I think Mello's car has run off the tires or something. Now, you've seen Jan Magnussen has been hounding and hounding for the last couple laps. And I said to Calvin a minute ago, I think that Mello's actually holding up the cars from behind. And now, wow, what a save.
Had a little move there.
That's turn 17 view from the helicopter, and that's a big save when you jump over that bump and lose. Look at this.
Oh, look at this.
88 challenge car. Yeah, we'll just split that.
Look at Gavin. Can he take advantage of it? Now down to the inside. Corvette's on the move.
Nice teamwork there. Do you see Magnussen move the Ferrari Mello out of the way? Moved him out wide. That opened the door for the team car.
And don't forget that those two yellow cars, they won't mind racing each other either. I know Doug Feehan has given them strict orders, but let's face it, when you sit down in that seat, you want to pick off positions, and Ollie Gavin wants to move forward as well. On board with Jamie Mello.
There's Mags up the inside. Jan Magnussen, number 3 Corvette there. Ducks around. I like this move right here. Oh, there's the save. Now watch what happens. Comes off the corner here and keeps the Ferrari out wide. It opens the door going into turn 1. They split this challenge car.
What happened there with that little wobble? I think he was on the brakes, and then the car in front of him was slowing even more. He had to release the brakes to jink to the outside. That caused the movement there. He's got the position, but watch Ollie Gavin now slide down to the inside.
See, that was a perfect team setup. It was beautiful. I mean, Magnussen pushes the Ferrari out wide, doesn't allow it to turn in for turn 1. It opens the inside of the racetrack up, and of course his teammate ducks right up in there.
And while the challenge car may not have been running the pace, that was your 3rd place driver, Shane Lewis, in the GT Challenge category. So he was running as quickly as he possibly could. It just shows you the speed differential. About 12 minutes after the hour right now, and since it is, after all, the 12 hours of Sebring, what we've decided to do, every hour on the hour, at 12 minutes past, I should say, we're going to give you a little recap on the action that you may have missed here at the 12 hours of Sebring. So at 12 minutes after the hour, make sure you always come back in, sit down from mowing your lawn or whatever you've been doing, and you can find out what's been going on. From the drop of the green, what's been going on is Peugeot Power out in front. Prototype cars battling along, the Aston Martin. But what about the GT battle? Wolf Hensler in the number 17, the Falcon-tired shod Porsche, takes over the point in GT. The first time that team has led in ALMS competition. But what about Emanuele Pirro on his return to the American Le Mans Series, working over the Peugeot, and problems for Paul Gentilosi's RSR team, the Jaguar, with a blown head gasket, the team having to work on that car. Not good things this early in the race. And talk about not good things early in the event. A problem for the 16 Dyson Racing, an engine misfire on that Mazda power plant, perhaps something electrical. They've taken it back to the paddock to continue to try to effect some repairs on that as well.
What about this move? Emanuele Pirro slicing and dicing his way through the various classes in traffic there. Day in the Peugeot as he jinks over the curbs.
We worried about the tires on the Falcon Porsche, and it looks like it's falling off its speed a little bit. Loses the lead right there.
And Jamie Mello beginning to pounce as well. Wolf Hensler now all the way back to 6th in the GT category. But Alexander Wirtz continues to hold down the point here at Sebring in his Peugeot. Then Simon Pagenaud in P2. He knows how to get the job done here as well. Just 47 minutes into the 58th running of the Mobil 1 12 hours of Sebring. We're already beginning to hear crews talk about pit stops. But for Alexander Wirtz, clear sailing out in front right now in the 07 Peugeot, the blue and silver liveried prototype, as he works through the back portions of the racetrack, turns 13, 14, and 15 onto the long back straightaway, which one point in time was a runway for the World War II bomber training base here in Sebring, Florida. And down at the end of that straightaway, that's where it gets really, really rough. Wirtz into turn 17, and you can see the large gap back behind him to Sebastian Bourdais, his teammate. And right now, Wirtz is just magic as he comes to pit road at 48 minutes and change. The Peugeot heads to the pits. The leader is in.
60 kilometers an hour down here in pit lane, about 37 miles per hour. They're not allowed to exceed that, otherwise they'll get a penalty. And another one of the rules here in the American Le Mans Series and at Le Mans, of course, is the refueling can be done, but no other servicing at the same time. So you can't be doing the tires here. You can see the crews waiting. Once they pull the fuel out, they'll then go to work on the tires.
Yeah, while we were away, we also saw the Drayson car come in and the Aston Martin car come in. And we've got the Highcroft Patron car in. So really all of our leaders coming into pit lane right now, doing this first session of pit stops. And We talked about adjustability in the beginning of the race, and Simon Pagenaud is down and away. And that's what the teams are talking about on the radios right now, making some air pressure adjustments because they haven't been able to do that long, full fuel stint run. So these cars not working exactly how the drivers would like to see them run over that entire stint. So a lot of teams dropping or raising that tire pressure, trying to get the car to work a little bit better.
We talk about these teams just really going head-to-head here. This is the first real pit stop in anger for all of these teams. You can rehearse it in your race shop doors, so you can do it here on the test stage, but until you get in that race mode, when the pressure's on, that's when you falter. So right now, everyone's trying to get in sync. Okay, what do we do that time? What do we need to improve on? Who made a mistake? And you're really just making the process, refining it throughout the course of this race.
Now, these first pit stops are more or less a data-gathering experiment as well, because this is the first time they'll get a good look at fuel mileage. They'll get a good look at tire wear. They'll get a look at what the car's responding to out there on the racetrack. They'll make some small adjustments like an air pressure adjustment, but this is the first reading they've really gotten to get on race conditions for a whole fuel stint.
For the fans at home, those two Peugeots look identical, excuse me, Brian, but the white mirrors are the 07, the blue mirrors are the 08, which stayed out for one extra lap. So Bourdais, this is his machine, the 07. Excuse me, this is Wirtz.
What happens when the white mirrors get a lot of bugs on them?
Now, what a lot of people think, and what we saw at Le Mans over the last several years, and Sebring as well, as you see the 08 onto pit road, Sebastian Bourdais behind the wheel, is that that diesel power plant got better fuel mileage. Well, with a smaller restrictor to reduce horsepower these days and less turbocharger pressure, you would think they'd get even better fuel mileage here in 2010. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. As you said, Dorsey, just data gathering right now.
Yeah, by taking away the boost, and it's going to definitely give you a bit better fuel mileage. They can map that and make it better as well.
Well, guys, interesting to see two different strategies on the 07 and the 08 Peugeot. On the 07, we saw Alexander Wirtz get out of that car, Marc Genet get behind the wheel. We're seeing Sebastian Bourdais staying in the 08 car, and no tires going on this car. We saw tires go on the 07, so two very different strategies playing out at the Peugeot camp.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chris. Here last year, they were double stinting the Peugeots, and the Audis could only single stint. Ultimately, Audi got victory that day. But, you know, it's all about just really checking it out. You can really, when you're running two cars, remember, these guys are just trying to evaluate everything, so you don't want to take any chances. They'd have looked at the tires coming off the 07 and then maybe made the call on the 08. Said the tires look good, let's keep the tires on the car for the 08 that was pitting second.
Much warmer weather today, though, so kind of surprising or not to see a double stint on tires in what effectively is the heat of the day.
Well, we saw it here last year, and I think that was a big surprise when they suddenly went doubles. We're like, uh-oh, that saves you about 10, 12 seconds on every pit stop because you can't refuel at the same time. So when you do take tires, it does cost you time on pit road. So that was a big surprise to everyone, and the fact they could do it throughout the course of last year, I think they'll be doing the same here today.
Plus, we've documented what happens when you're on cold tires, sticker tires, because you go out there for a lap or two, and it's really hard not to spin out. In the meantime, Paul Gentilosi's Jaguar has been officially retired from the race for overheating, and the #1 car that just made a pit stop, Simon Pagenaud, went too quick on pit lane. He's going to have to do a stop and go.
You see the 17, and remember, these opening laps, the first time in American Le Mans Series competition that the Falcon Tire Porsche has led in an American Le Mans Series event. So great run for them. They've got those new tires on now. It'll be interesting to see. Did they change compound? Are they continuing to experiment with construction and compound, trying to find a tire that will last?
Well, that is the question mark. So many of these tire companies come with typically around 3 different compounds and constructions. This team, the fact that they're a tire development team, may have more on hand, but a lot of that have gotten out of the way. They had a two-day test here about 3 weeks ago, and they really go through all of those different scenarios and try to really hone down and try to narrow how many choices you want to use here on race weekend.
Yeah, it was interesting with the Falcon tires. I spoke with Brian Sellers. He said that obviously the big tire development is exactly why the reason they're here. And they saw, after an incredible opening 15 laps from Wolf Hensler, they had started to see the tire degradation. Now, that means that the car becomes slower through the corners. It's slower off the corners with traction. So it's a very, very minimal thing. As a road driver, you wouldn't notice it, but as a racing driver, you're really in tune to it, and it starts to slow your lap times down. So it's that's the data they came here to collect. select, and they're not telling me actually whether they changed tire compound, but they certainly are reacting to it. And it's an amazing thing, worth noting. The tire engineers come over here from Japan. That is the raison d'etre for this entire program, and they are probably one of the most responsive teams to tire manufacturer operations. So it's real-time data going back, and at the next race, Long Beach, you'll see exactly a new formula. So it's really clever stuff here at the Falcon team.
Dirk Warner climbing out of the number 92 BMW, 4 new Dunlops on that, and fuel, and they did a driver change as well. So they're back underway, and problems for the 11, one of the LMP Challenge cars.
Big impact on the right front. You can see body damage as the fender's missing there. Not sure on the racetrack where that brings out our first full course caution.
Joel Feinberg had problems, remember, in the early goings, had spun and flat spotted a tire, came back to pit road a couple of times, and it looks like more problems for Joel. First entry in the LMP Challenge category. Remember, a regular competitor in American Le Mans Series competition in a Viper over the last year or so, but this is a very different machine than what he is used to piloting, I should say. You see the tire wall askew, so we'll take this opportunity to take a quick break from Sebring, and then we'll return to the 58th running of the Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring. But don't go anywhere. These fans certainly are not. It's a beautiful weather here in Florida. Stick with us. 5 classes of American Le Mans Series competition. It doesn't get any better than this. If you're sitting at home and you got a question, we'll reach into the race and go ahead and ask it. Submit your questions to Aston Martin Racing Team. The guys at Patron, Porsche Racing, SpeedTV.com will get the answer. So go to SpeedTV.com, ALMS section, or search keyword Sebring for more information. You got questions, ask them. We've got questions, and so do a lot of drivers and teams as cars coming to pit road for more pit stops. I see the 17 rolling down pit lane again, and it is busy down there. The 007, the Aston Martin, trying to get refired after this stop, and they are away.
It is really busy, and these pit boxes this year are a few feet shorter, so all those GT2 cars, you see them all packed there together. I spoke to the BMW team, said it will be a mess down here when everyone pits at the same time. Look at the Corvette team. They're legendary with their pit stops. They leapfrog the number 45 Flying Lizard, and now that comes out second in line as we see it, to let things cycle to see exactly who is the leader in class.
I'll tell you, Doug Feehan's Corvette boys are going to tune up this GT class because they're going to show them on pit lane that you can't allow to put these Corvettes in front of you just because of a pit stop.
Both of the Corvettes were in pit lane, as we saw, and I don't know if you saw their pit stops, but they are so completely orchestrated that they were almost identical. Danny Binks keeps an eye on both of these cars, and they make sure that they practice every single operation on the pit stop. They've won the pit stop challenge year after year. This team certainly knows what they're doing as they move into the GT2 competition for the full season.
Dan Binks, the crew chief on the number 3 car, really works those guys hard, and they do good work. Now, if we talked to Jan Magnussen and Jörg Bergmeister before about grudges, who's the meat in the Corvette sandwich right here, boys?
Oh, boy.
Yeah, they ran in a similar position at the final race last year, and it didn't turn out pretty. But right now, Mags has the upper hand, or the 3 car does, certainly.
Well, and I'd like to think that everybody, the cooler heads would prevail, and this is the first race of the season, and you don't risk damaging your car, but it's certainly a curious position.
Those Corvettes look a little bit menacing, I would say, to a Porsche driver.
It's
right
Mr.
now.
Sebring, Johnny O'Connell behind the wheel of the 3 car. Chris, what do you got?
Well, Alex Wirtz is cooling down here in pit lane after that opening stint in the 07 car. Were you at all surprised with Manuele Pirro in the Dreisen car, how much he shadowed both Peugeots?
Oh yeah, I was not surprised, I was shocked. But hey, it's good. We saw in free practice that Emanuele and the Dreisen car is very fast, and we have to now pay the price for having a heavier car, you know, from the regulations. And so that will be all the year long fighting very hard, tough. But that's good, it's good racing.
This is your first 12-hour Sebring, but you were here back in 1996 with Greg Moore in the Mercedes and the FIA GT. Is this how you remembered Sebring, or has the track changed a little bit in the competition?
I have very nice memories from Sebring, especially because I shared the car with Greg Moore, who was such an outstanding driver, and his family were absolutely great. They had a warm welcome for us here. so did the fans. So Sebring was nice to come back now for the 12 hours, and I love the race. You know, I went over yesterday to the fan zone. It's absolutely crazy and a bit over. It's crazy, but anyway, that makes the atmosphere. So I love it to be here.
Well, get some rest. We got a long race.
Thank you.
And what a good guy, but he probably looked like an NBA basketball player walking around to the fan zone over there.
Tall.
Right now, the 08, Sebastian Bourdais out in front. Look at this battle here. You see the 07, then the 8. That's Emanuele Pirro down the back straightaway, and that Diesel and the V10 Judd run pretty well together down the long back straightaway. Getting the move done there, but which one of these cars is going to come to pit lane as they go through turn 17? We saw the 8 get by. Good stuff out there, and one of the things that's great is that we talked about the rules and how they've brought these prototype diesel-powered and petrol-powered cars together. Both of those cars have pitted, so the race is on. Good stuff out there as you watch the competitors, but it's not just fun on the racetrack. They have fun off the track as well. What about the autograph session for the Patron Highcroft team? Well,
3 ugly characters there, right?
One of them's in a skirt.
Which one do you think is the Frenchman? A little Crocodile Dundee action for Brabs. We'll be back to Sebring. The 12 hours of Sebring from Sebring, Florida. Here's a good look at what's around here. A lot of water. We certainly know that. And you're going to get plenty of coverage today on Speed. Next, our coverage will continue on speedtv.com, and then we'll be back on air from 2 p.m. to 11. So there's really no excuse to miss a minute of the Mobil 1 12 hours of Sebring, because we got you from 30 minutes before the drop of the green to 30 minutes afterwards, and you can catch it right here on the network or on speedtv.com. That's what we'll be doing today. A lot of fans out there will be soaking up the sun, maybe tipping back a cold frosty beverage, watching the American Le Mans Series. 5 classes of cars competing here on this very historic circuit. You don't think it's crowded? Take a look from the Porsche aerial cam. A helicopter giving us great views today, and you can tell just how good the weather is, and these fans are in for a treat.
Just an amazing racetrack for the drivers and for the fans. You get up close and personal, of course, and even Alexander Wirtz said he went over there and mingled with some of the fans this weekend, said it was a great time. So there's a great camaraderie here within the paddock. I mean, the fact that the fans can get up and close and personal to race cars is really something unique to a lot of these spectators, so they really enjoy that aspect of this form of racing.
While the fans sit there, we understand there's an update on the 62, Jamie.
When we saw the pit window open, the Risi Ferrari came in quite early, and I spoke with the team, and they said that's because they did extra laps, that quick lap, lay down and get on pole, but they weren't able to do it. So those tires that were on the car actually had about 10 extra laps on them than the other cars in the GT field, and they just had so much oversteer that they needed to come in and change the tires early and just get back out on track and try and make up some positions.
Well, that's a great point, because we did see the 62 car start to fade just a little bit when the Corvettes got around him. So obviously Jamie Mello made that call, said, guys, I don't have the grip I need here. And you don't want to throw it away, Dorsey. If the car's getting really sketchy, you better to come in, take your punishment there, and get the boy back out.
Talk about the history of Sebring and how the track has changed. Look at the old hairpin there where we used to drive.
You wouldn't want to have a brake failure there. Oh, yeah, wait a minute, I did have one there.
That explains a lot.
It's all runoff now, but think about how far you went to make that corner and the lack of runoff at the end of it.
This little thing there that you can't see it, but past it, there's a billboard that there was a car stuffed through years back.
Which is why they've altered that a little bit, and you've now got the runoff, so a little better safety here at Sebring over the years. The track has changed a lot. In fact, it used to go straight around that building and out onto the runways in the back. The configuration has changed many times, but in any way you look at it, it is definitely a challenge when you come to Sebring.
Well, I drove the original course, a 5.2-mile course, which was a blast during the day, but not so much fun at night as you're way out on that runway, the far runway, as far as you can see, running back down toward the...
Get lost out there, Dorsey.
Many did. You know, if you spun off the racetrack, you had to wait for somebody to come by to see which way to go again.
Some people may still be out there.
Yeah, they could be. There was a cow hit out there one time. I know that.
Oh, my God. But it gives you a good look at the facility here, and the thing that's interesting about this facility, it can be split in half, and a lot of IndyCar teams, a lot of race teams come to test here on the inside circuit. They don't run down that long back straightaway or through turn 17. You can kind of pick and choose and run the configuration that you want. but it is a hotbed of testing during the winter down here. A lot of teams, not only from the United States and North America, but European teams come over as well, as we know that Audi will be here Monday and Tuesday testing.
Yeah, they've got a brand new race car. It's called the R15 Plus. Last year's car was the R15, and they've been down at Homestead this weekend getting some long distance running, some fast running on the oval down there. They're going to come here on Monday and put the car through its paces. But it just got the rollout just a couple of weeks ago, so they certainly didn't feel they were ready to go in terms of race trim, but they know how important it is to run here at Sebring and really iron out all the bugs of a race car.
Sebastian Bourdais on point in the 08 Peugeot as they flash through turn 17. The green flag will wave, and we're racing again at Sebring. And what a jump Bourdais got. The second car in line was the red car, an LMP Challenge car of Andy Wallace. You can see how that drops away as the prototypes flash by. Bourdais leading Pirot, and then Marc Genet in the second of the Peugeots through turn 1.
And we saw Pirot take advantage of Genet just before we went to break, and I think the reason being is, remember, Genet changed tires, so he may have still been trying to generate tire temperature with the 07 car, whereas the 08 and the 8 car, the racing car that now runs second, was still on warm rubber. So you can certainly take advantage, Dorsey, when you come up on a car that's just got fresh tires on.
That was just a huge jump at the start, though. I mean, when you looked at that, it was, I don't think I would have liked that much if I was in Manuel Pirot's position.
See the number 89 LMP Challenge car with a bit of a problem as Pirot flashes by, trying to hunt down the 08 of Sebastian Bourdais up in front of him. Bourdais, very familiar with this section of the racetrack, not because he's only raced here, but the testing, like we talked about in his time in Champ Car, he certainly tested here a lot in those cars, so he knows this section of the racetrack very well.
He does, and of course he's had a win here in class GT2 along with Brabs at the Panos, so he certainly knows how to get the job done. He's seen the top step of the podium here before, but not for overall victory like he's looking for today.
Speaking about fights in GT, you saw that the number 45, the Flying Lizard Porsche, back out in front of the Corvettes. It was Patrick Long in the 45, has gotten past Johnny O'Connell in the 3, but look up front. The number 92 BMW, Bill Auberlin out in front. Right behind him, that beautiful red number 62. The Ferrari, Jimmy Bruni behind the wheel right now.
And I think we're going to see a new Bill Auberlin this year. He's been split with his regular teammate, Joey Hand. They've really tried to shake things up a little bit there with the BMW team for this year. He's been with Joey for so long, and they said maybe those boys are getting a little too comfortable. And I think Bill may have taken it really as somewhat a gesture that maybe you're not the man anymore. And I think he's really going to perform this year and give it 1,000,000%. Right now he's up front. He's going to try and keep that BMW right there. But Jimmy slides it down to the inside. Wow, that was decisive.
I think we've seen a Ferrari do that before down in turn 17, but it was up against the 45 of Jörg Bergmeister. Who could forget that finish here at Sebring, the closest in history, but very different outcome this time.
I have to wonder, Dorsey, maybe those BMWs are having a bit of an issue getting through the bumps of turn 17. We saw Joey Hand have that crash there this morning, so suddenly mid-corner, Bill didn't have the speed, and Jimmy Bruni just pounced.
Yeah, the new tires of Ferrari without question. Really, you know, the other thing I saw on the Ferrari is it seems to have a little bit of legs coming off of the corner as you see the Corvette boys swap positions there.
I saw O'Connell around Olivier Beretta, so they've changed drivers on that first stop. Magnussen and Ollie Gavin getting out. Now Johnny O'Connell behind the wheel of the number 3 Corvette. Just to distinguish between those two cars, the number 3 car has yellow mirrors and a red windshield stripe, and the 4 car has black mirrors, black stripes, so it makes it a little easier to ID the cars for the fans at home.
No wonder that Corvette got past. The rear tires going in the wrong direction.
Right now, Joey Hand in the BMW back behind the wheel. He had that problem in the warm-up this morning. I'm sure he wants to make amends for that. The pass on the Corvettes, it was teammate on teammate, and then thank you, I'll take that back.
That's the problem with turning in early there. You turn in early and it runs you wide on the exit. Leaves the inside open, and I'll take that back from you. Thank you very much.
Johnny O'Connell says, if you want to be there, fine, but I think I'm going to get it back, and he did. And Joey Hand sitting there saying, I just need to be cool, calm, and collected and not put a wheel wrong. After the mistake I made this morning, I need to make amends.
Well, if you remember Mid-Ohio leaving pit lane a couple of years ago, we know that these Corvettes like to trade paint and duke it out amongst one another.
Right now, the 45 of Patrick Long just holding station in front of the 2 Corvettes in the GT category. It's Jimmy Bruni who holds down the point right now. Well, you're watching the race here, but you can also become a follower of the American Le Mans Series on Twitter, and you can read and receive up-to-the-minute tweets from the American Le Mans Series to get the latest news and notes on and off the track. You can find the series at ALMS Notes. Check it out. We'll be back to Sebring. The competitors, they've got a long way to go, and the fans, plenty of corners to look at, plenty of cars to watch. Sebastien Bourdais leads overall. Make a note on your calendars for Thursday night and catch an all-new Bull Run with Bill Goldberg. As the pressure mounts, the competitors begin to crack. And before this leg of Bull Run is over, 3 teams will face one of the toughest challenges yet. Bull Run, all-new episode, Thursday night, 10 Eastern, only on Speed. Look at this battle in GT. The 45, Patrick Long, trying to hold off the Corvette. Number 3, Johnny O'Connell behind the wheel.
We talk about that rivalry between the 45 and the 3. It was the 2 teammates who got into Mazda Raceway Laguna Seca in the finale, but certainly there is a little bit of bad blood. Even though the drivers kind of played it down at the start of the show, you have to feel that the feelings run deep.
Calvin, before Patrick Long got in that Porsche, he and I were watching the Corvettes go up against the Ricci Ferrari, and he was just kind of shaking his head saying, boy, those Corvette guys, they just kept their cards so close to their chest all week long. Well, I just heard him over my scanner, and he said, those Corvette guys, they are just playing with us, guys. They are just playing with us.
Well, hopefully they'll play nice, because it was really Johnny O'Connell who was more outspoken about that incident than anybody else, and he is behind the wheel of the number 3 right now. So Patrick Long has his mirrors full of that bright yellow number 3 Corvette with Johnny O'Connell behind the wheel.
Well, I remember when I used to drive with Robbie Gordon, I'd have to put a sticker on the back of the car so people wouldn't hit me knowing that.
As you cycle back from Johnny O'Connell, look one position back in class. You go back to the white BMW of Joey Hand, the number 90. You see him coming past one of the LMP Challenge cars. He has gotten past Olivier Beretta in the number 4. Take a look at how it happened.
And you see there, Beretta gets balked there by that LMPC car, and Joey Hand just keeps the hammer down, goes to the outside around the long way there through the Fangio chicane. Then he's got the inside line for that one. Great move.
And we've talked about the traffic in these challenge classes and the challenge, pardon the pun, that they would create. And they certainly have done that. Drivers both in LMP classes and in GT class using them to help cement the pass.
You're talking about Joey Hand, guys, and he said that this is the best race car he's ever driven. BMW has worked so hard in the offseason to prepare a great car for him and Dirk to race all season long. And he said, you know, if they're going to give me the best race car that they've ever given me, I'm going to have to give them the best me that I've ever given them. He's lost 25 pounds since he raced in Sebring last year, and he said this team has just grown so much, and he's got to give it back to him.
Right now, he's doing exactly that. You see the Corvette team watching the feed as well. They want to know what's going on out on the racetrack. I'll tell you what is going on. The Peugeots, very strong as Sebastien Bourdais continues to lead overall, but the fans, they throng to Sebring every year to watch the challenges here from the drivers and the teams. They're seeing a good one right now. Speed's coverage of the American Le Mans Series Mobil 1 12 Hours of Sebring is brought to you by BMW. BMW, the ultimate driving machine. See the field streaming through turn 17 there at Sebring International Raceway. The schedule for the rest of the day, like I said, you won't miss a minute. Coverage continues at noon on speedtv.com, and then at 2 p.m. we're back on air here on the network from 2 p.m. to 11. Don't miss a single lap. And remember, if you have to step away at 12 minutes past the hour, we'll be bringing you updates 12 minutes after the hour and from the 12 hours of Sebring. You couldn't ask for any better weather. It's not real hot outside, guys, but as the temperature has changed, I'm sure the balance of these cars have changed as well. But for Sebastien Bourdais, seems to be having things his way.
He does, and he's double stinning these tires, which seems to be like the way to go right now. But, you know, just have to see how this strategy works out. His teammate pitted first, and they got the information and kept Seb on the same tires.
Keeping those tires on not only saved on time on the pit stop, but it also looks like it hasn't hurt him at all. They haven't worn, they haven't lost their, quote, fast, so that seems to be working. Go back to P2, you see the Patron Highcroft entry.
That's Simon Pagenaud leading in class right now as we watch that beautiful car.
He survived a problem in pit lane. He was 2 miles an hour over the pit lane speed limit, so he had to do a stop and go, come back through, but hasn't hurt them too bad. They're going to be pretty dominant here this year. I mean, they really are on a roll. This team has now got, you know, two of the fastest guys on a regular basis in Simon Pagenaud and David Brabham teamed up together, and obviously ably supported by Marino Franchitti has been dynamite this weekend in this car. He'll be their third driver at the long-distance events, including Le Mans. They've gone to Le Mans for the very first time as a team.
On board, another of the prototypes, but this is the brand new class, the LMP Challenge prototype. Christophe Bouchou behind the wheel of the 55. The Level 5 Motorsports team, two of these prototypes in the field today, and they're actually running 1-2 in class.
Yeah, they're pushing very, very hard. And talking to some of the team members here this weekend, I mean, things haven't been that smooth in terms of the chemistry amongst all the various teammates. Christophe Bouchou is very aggressive in what he needs in a race car, how much seat time he wants, and he's been pushing things pretty hard. But right now, Ryan Hunter-Reay has got him in his sights. This is going to be a fascinating battle, but maybe they're going to push each other too hard. Remember, this is a 12-hour race. You keep pushing each other, maybe the others can sit back and take advantage if you hit problems.
We saw that in qualifying, how competitive it is. This is, of course, the Ricci Ferrari leading in its class.
Jimmy Bruni behind the wheel. We talked about how good Ricci has been in endurance racing. What makes a team a specialist in endurance racing? I mean, we've seen them certainly win sprint races, but from an endurance standpoint, they've been dominant.
Preparation, no question about it. Preparation not only on the racetrack, but preparation in regards to anything that might go wrong with this car and the ability to get it back out on the racetrack quickly.
And a team that certainly knows about preparation is Alex Job Racing. Good to see them back in the series. They're running 3 GT Challenge cars, one of which is leading right now. In fact, they qualified 1, 2, and 3 in class, and Lee Keen in the blue and white number 81 Porsche has led.